Fraudsters are having a feeding frenzy trying to hook consumers with phishing scams, pretending to be from their bank. This, among everything else Americans must worry about during the pandemic. Here to offer us a heads up on current phishing scams being used to target consumers is Paul Benda of the American Bankers Association. Thanks for joining us. Start by telling us how common phishing scams are.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Aubrey. So unfortunately, phishing scams are really common right now, and they've been common for a long time. The scammers will send out emails by the millions. They'll send phone calls. You've seen, phone calls purported to be from Apple about your iPhone account being locked or the Social Security Administration, or they'll send you texts, and all these are trying to lure you to click on these suspicious links and provide your personal and confidential information so they can try and hack your account.
Well, you mentioned that these types of scams, they've been around for a long time and we've been dealing with the pandemic. Has that increased the frequency of the phishing scams out there?
Yeah, unfortunately it has. We've seen since the pandemic started a 400% to 500% increase in phishing attacks. And a lot of these are targeted on, instilling fear and anxiety in people, and the pandemic's made people a little more anxious. And so, they're putting out those scam tools out there to try and capture you about information about the pandemic, whether it's economic impact payments or whether it's information about a vaccine or cures. They're trying to lure you in to click on these links.
Yeah, and they're pretty sophisticated sometimes. I mean, you really have to double check and make sure what you're clicking on. Now, what are some of the new bank phishing scams that we should really look out for?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They are sophisticated. They can send you an email that looks exactly like it comes from your bank, or they can send you an email that looks like it comes from the Treasury. We saw a lot of these when those economic impact payments were going out to most Americans. They might send an email. It looks like it comes from the IRS. It says, here's how to track your stimulus payment. Provide us your name, date of birth, and social security number. People think they're talking to the government when in fact they're providing all that sensitive information to the scammers. And so, it's really these timely things that they focus on that have people's interest in trying to capture that information.
Yeah, you definitely have to be savvy because we get a lot of emails. We're inundated with them, but you have to know which ones are the ones you really need to pay attention to that are real and which ones may be a scam. What are you doing in the banking industry to try and protect consumers from these types of scams?
Well, there's two things we're doing, and primarily. The first is, banks are spending billions of dollars on their cybersecurity infrastructure to try and protect you and your data. And so that's part of the reason you see those fraud alerts, when you might buy something that's out of your local area, the bank alerts you. The second is that we started this Banks Never Ask That campaign. The ABA is working with 1,500 banks across the country on a humorous campaign that tries to tell you what banks would and wouldn't ask, to try and tell you, is a bank going to ask you whether you wear boxers or briefs? Are they going to ask you whether you believe in aliens? No. Are they going to ask you for that your username and password unsolicited? No, they're not. And so it's really trying to give consumers the capability to recognize, hey, there might be something fishy going on here.
Now, do these scammers, do they target people in particular, or do they just send out a bunch of emails hoping to reel in a couple people? I mean, what should someone do when they think they're being targeted?
So it's both. There are some unsophisticated scammers that'll send out 1 million emails because it's cheap. And if 10 people click on it, they're happy. And then there's other scammers that are really sophisticated. They've done their homework. They've gone on the dark web. They might have bought your information that came out in another breach. So they know your name. They know your date of birth. They might even know the last 4 of your social. And they craft something that looks very legitimate, like it's coming from your bank or your email provider. What you need to recognize is, banks or other legitimate companies aren't going to send out unsolicited requests for your personal information. Your bank's never going to, out of the blue, ask for your user account and password, saying that your account's going to be locked unless you act immediately. And so the idea is to try and just, have people recognize, this might not be right, pause, take a breath, and then contact a source that's trusted.
And that's your campaign right now is hashtags banks never ask that. Any other top tips to spot a phishing scam? I know that I'm always checking what email did this email come from?
Yep, those are the things. The challenge, though, is, the really good guys, or the really good bad guys, can make that caller ID say what they want. They can make that from box say what it wants. The key here is if you get an unsolicited email or text or phone call asking for confidential information, don't click on it. They're going to pressure you. Anytime anyone tries to pressure you to take action right away, saying your account's going to be locked, you're going to lose all your money, blah, 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 just ignore them. Say, hey, I'm going to call the number on the back of my bank card and make sure I'm talking to the right person. Or I'm going to go to the website that I bookmarked, or I'm going to use my bank app, and I'm going to make sure that I know who I'm talking to, because don't trust anyone that reaches out to you directly.
Paul Benda, some great advice there, and we can never have enough reminders about these scams that are out there. For the full Banks Never Ask That list, you can visit aba.com.